Welcome to Strategic Management. In these next several clips, I will be highlighting some of the key points that we will be discussing in the Strategic Management course. Of course, this is not inclusive of everything that we will be discussing, but I will highlight some of the key points that sometimes students get confused on or want to go through again to try to help them in their studies and to prepare for the class. So these videos are optional. They are by no means required. Some people find them very helpful. Some people do not find them helpful. It's totally up to you if you choose to use them or use some of them. So let's get started. So in this class, we're going to be focusing on strategic management. And what we do know is that companies that use a strategy in managing their business and ensuring success are more successful than those that are just kind of haphazard of it. So you want to think of some of your companies that you've known that have been very, very successful, and they really have a plan, they have a vision, and they make it happen. You think of companies like, you may not be a big fan of Walmart, but like it or not, it has a booming business, and it continues to grow, and it continues to expand, and it continues to have very real strategies that they use every day. In fact, in this course, we're going to be talking about Walmart just because it's so easy to research and how many changes and things they've gone through. Again, I'm not asking you to be a fan of it or not to be a fan of it, but to be open to understanding the strategies they use to be successful in their business. Get us a little bit better shot here. When we talk about strategic management, we're talking about companies and their strategic plan. But we also, when we look at strategic management, want to look at that you can have a strategic plan within a department or within a division or within a unit of a workplace as well. So the bigger plan is for the whole company, but it does not preclude smaller entities or smaller teams or smaller departments from using these same strategies for their own success. Strategic management is the process of analyzing the current situation, developing appropriate strategies, putting those strategies into action, and evaluating and changing those strategies as needed. So it's really thinking out our business. What are we going to do? What's going on? Where are we at? Where are we going to go? What are the steps that we need to take to get there to ensure our success? I love strategic management. I love it both for businesses, but it can be even applied to families. When we look at our own family, what are our own personal goals? Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? And what steps do we need to take to ensure that we get there with success? So that's important for us to remember, that there's some great keys in here that you will find very helpful. Basically, there's a several-step process. The first one is the situation analysis. What is the situation? Where are we at now? What do we have? What are our assets? And what are our threats? What is the strategy that we're going to decide is an okay strategy that we're going to take on to tackle? What is the evaluation of that strategy? How is it working? And then we implement the strategy and we move on and we go on to the next goal as well. So we're always going to look at where we're at, formulate a strategy, implement that strategy, and then review how it's gone. When we look at strategy and strategic formulation, a couple of things we want to look at. One is the functional role. What do we do? Who are we? What is our business? What are the parameters or the laws or the rules that confine our business? Do we make glasses? Do we make houses? Are we a service industry? What do we do? What is our function? What is our purpose? We have to have a clear understanding of that to move forward with our strategic goals. We also have to understand the competition. What do we do versus what does the competition do? What do they do differently? What do they do better? What do they do worse? How are we different or unique from that competition so that we can be aggressive in that workplace in competing with those people? Many people may do the same thing, but we do it a little bit differently. And what is the corporation? What are the corporate goals? What is the goals of the whole organization? And we have to keep that in mind, that we don't stray from the goals of that organization and keep true to honor the organization that we're involved with. Let's see, what other things do we want to talk about in this first segment? Something else we want to realize when we're talking about strategic management is we have to be able to identify When we look at the situation analysis, where are we at? One of the things we're going to want to look at is what are our resources? And oftentimes when we think of resources, we think of money. Money is a resource, and that's true. Money is a resource. Certainly savings is a resource, money is a resource, that type of thing. But it goes further than that. Resources also include equipment, buildings, facilities, materials or raw materials that we may have on hand or that we may even be using in our production. But it also includes things that are often forgotten, like human resources, brain power, the right employees, having the right energy, having that right cream of the crop working for us, people with experience that can bring a richness to the table, knowledge, judgment, wisdom, skills, abilities. All of these things are very important to keep in mind, and they are all skills that we, resources that we have in moving forward with things. We also have intangible things that aren't concrete, that we can't put our hands on. Those are things like our brand name or our reputation, trademarks, databases, resources, people being revered in the company as an expert or in the community as an expert, that kind of thing. That carries a lot of value when people say, oh, well, that's a premier product or that's a premier person, so we're going to give it more merit, even if it hasn't proven themselves yet. And also another resource that we have is history and culture. What is the history of the organization, their ability to work through things, the culture of the people. Some groups and some organizations just have a really rich culture and they work together really well to go through problems, and others do not have as much of that. The values of the corporation are certainly something we want to keep in mind when we look at that. We also have 3 driving forces within the business that we want to keep in mind, and one of those is the information revolution. Companies look different. We're going to be focusing a lot of that in the class. Companies look different. We are now very, very rich in information, databases, computers. It just looks very different. So we have to be progressive and we have to be real about that, and that's a real value in our businesses. And if we're not willing to change and we're not willing to progress, then we're going to be easily pushed aside. So embracing technology and globalization, understanding that through technology and through the world that we have today, that our audience isn't just our backyard or even our city, but it's the world. Literally the world, not even just our city, but we can expand in great ways. So companies that are going to be successful are going to have that ability to utilize that global market. 2 other terms you're going to see that are important to understand the difference in. One of those is offshoring, and one of those is outsourcing. These are for your bigger companies. 100 years ago, we produced something. We had a lot of factories. We had a lot of businesses. We don't have as much of that anymore. We have a lot of very rich technology, but things are still being built. They're just not necessarily being built here. There's 2 ways that happens. One is offshoring, where we take our American business and we take it to another country and we produce our product in another country because the labor is less expensive, the land is less expensive, the equipment is less expensive, the resources are less expensive, and the rules and regulations may be looser, allowing for less expense to go into that kind of thing. So that's when we're going to be taking our business and moving it to a different area to use it. And outsourcing is when we just go to a company that already exists in a different place and say, can you produce this thing for me? I have the technology, the business mind. I want you to give it back to me, but I want you to produce this thing for me. And we find that when they outsource those things, oftentimes they can be produced for cheaper than we can produce them here or have been able to historically. And oftentimes businesses will use a combination of those in order to keep their product cost down, allowing them to gain a better profit. Because of those driving forces, because of their reality in our business today, we do see some changes that are happening in our businesses. One is a less need for physical stuff. We have less office buildings. We have less factories. We have less land that are incorporating those things because they're being used elsewhere. So we have less stuff, and that's very important to understand. We also have vanishing distances, and we have vulnerabilities that we hadn't thought about before, such as viruses, technology, infiltrations, things that could hurt our businesses. So we have to be aware of all those things as well.